Hello, my name is Maggie Douglas, and I want to tell you about city transportation systems and our need for the state to pass a transportation revenue package. The state's transportation system is a decentralized network managed by many different jurisdictions, including cities, counties, the state, and tribal nations. And cities are responsible for transportation assets that include 25,000 lane miles of streets, sidewalks, bicycle infrastructure, some state highways, public transportation infrastructure, utilities, and the natural environment. In the last year alone, city streets accommodated for 26% of statewide vehicle miles traveled. Cities largely fund their transportation systems through local revenue sources. 80% of funding comes from local general revenue and local transportation-specific revenues, like transportation benefit districts. That funding is bolstered by state resources, which account for about 13% of local funding, and federal resources that account for about 8%. However, cities across the state are experiencing the consequences of structural budget deficit. The price of goods and services to maintain and preserve existing infrastructure is becoming more costly, while city transportation revenue is capped at growth factor less than the rate of inflation. Unfortunately, the impacts of the pandemic only exacerbate this funding gap. As recently as November 2020, 60% of our cities anticipate a significant decrease in fuel taxes. 68% of our cities have canceled or postponed capital projects, and over half of our cities are using or are planning to use existing capital reserves to meet transportation funding deficits. And as we have learned from the last recession, the pandemic economy is likely to endure for a long time. The Joint Transportation Committee, JTC, recently found that in the next 10 years, cities will need to spend $20 to $28 billion to maintain and improve our transportation assets. The JTC also reported that funding levels across all jurisdictions are less than half of what is needed, without even considering the accumulated deficits of deferred maintenance and preservation. This analysis does not factor in the fiscal impact of the COVID-19 recession. So, where is this money coming from? Well, that's why we're advocating for a new transportation revenue package. We need this revenue package to include significant and permanent financial support for basic maintenance and preservation of our existing infrastructure. We know that gas tax distributions to cities rely on a statutory formula, and these distributions reflect our economic conditions. Fewer people are traveling today due to stay-at-home orders, which directly impacts fuel consumption, ridership fares, and toll collections. In fact, ridership on public transit is less than a third of what it was pre-pandemic. We also need this revenue package to include grant and loan opportunities for cities to invest in equity-based multimodal projects and culvert removal. Cities often say that the Transportation Improvement Board and the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board funds are critical to completing capital projects. These funds account for anywhere between 30 and 60% of our smallest cities' transportation budgets. Fully funding these programs mean that cities can support all road users, including pedestrians, drivers, and cyclists, regardless of ability. Funding these programs also means that cities can participate in the coordinated, comprehensive effort to address fish passage barriers. We are grateful for the stakeholder feedback opportunities that Representatives Fye, Senator Hobbs, and their colleagues provided over the interim, and we encourage our cities to continue to participate in this feedback process. Call your legislators, schedule a Zoom coffee, and provide feedback on transportation legislation. If you're curious how to do these things virtually, please see the link below for a tutorial from Candace Bach, our Government Relations Director. Thank you for your continued engagement in this process to pass a transportation package. Together, we can tell the state to pass a transportation revenue package that works for cities.